Awesome. Thank you so much. A quick word of thanks for allowing me, old guy, to speak at a TEDx youth thing. That doesn't quite feel right to lead off, but I'm excited to do it anyway. I'm going to tell you a quick story as I get started. When I was a senior in high school, in the fall of 1998, I was overwhelmed and overloaded. There were so many choices that were surrounding me. I was knee-deep in the college application process. I was thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. And then I had tests to study for on top of it all. It felt like I was always just treading water, never quite making progress. And then one day, my mom came into my room and said, "After you go to school, you got to go to the dentist." And I said, "Okay," because that's what I did. And so I went to the dentist who I had seen for the previous 15 years of my life. He knew me well. And this time, it was a routine cleaning, and we went for that cleaning. And kind of in the middle of it, he looks at me and he says, "Alex, when's the last time you flossed your teeth?" And I had a good answer for this question. I looked at him and I said, "This morning." And he looked at me and said, "Oh, awesome. How about prior to that?" I didn't have a great answer to that question because that was, well, the last time I saw you that morning was the last time before it. Clearly not his first rodeo asking that question, and obviously I was trying to be sneaky. But what he followed up with was this. "Alex, as I'm looking around and I'm seeing inside your teeth, you're doing a good job brushing. Looks like you do that every day. But there's things inside that you don't quite see. In between your gums, at the base of those teeth, there's a buildup. We call it plaque, and you got it. And you've got it because you're not taking a minute every day to floss your teeth." Now inside my brain, I'm thinking, who flosses their teeth? Nobody that I know. And I was probably right. But this was the story about me in that moment. And so he looks at me and he says, "If you want to fix this, you know what to do. You've got a choice, and I think you can manage it." So I went home and I was energized. I don't want gingivitis. I don't even know what that means, but I know I don't want it. And for the next 2 weeks, every morning, I flossed my teeth. And it hurt, and they bled, and I didn't like it. And the farther I got away from that dentist appointment, the more in my mind I said to myself, you know what? I'll just start flossing again a month before my next dentist appointment. It'll be fine. And of course, inevitably, the next dentist appointment came around, and that morning, I was like, oh, goodness, I need to floss my teeth. And the same thing happened. In this life, we are surrounded by little choices. And oftentimes, those little everyday decisions get lost beneath the things that we see as large, enormous choices. And those choices can cloud out the things that we know we need to do. But I've got something that I've acquired over the years, and it's this. No matter how inconsequential a choice may seem, it's important. We are all agents of change through the agency of our choice. Everything we do has a ripple. Everything we do has an outcome. And even when it seems small, it's still there. Now, it's sometimes hard to wrap our head around this, so I'm going to try and demonstrate it as best I can. And I'm borrowing this. If you've been around the block a little bit, you might have heard this story of a professor that walks into a classroom and sets an empty bowl onto a table and starts filling it with items. I'm going to riff on that story just a little bit. That one talks about priorities. I'm going to see if I can spin it a slightly different way. So here's my empty bowl, and that is me. That's my name. It's empty right now, but I know it's not, because if that is a representation of who I am, there's maybe an argument to be made that who I am could be defined by the choices that I make. And I make choices all the time. And sometimes they're large, and sometimes they're small, but they're choices nonetheless. Sometimes I make a choice to repair something. And sometimes the tool I use to repair something, if you've ever used this before, is not terribly strong, and I know it's not going to be permanent, but it's a fix in the moment. And so I make that choice. Sometimes I want that choice to be a little bit more permanent. And so I grab a different thing that I can choose. More permanent, but causes a little bit of damage. We've been there before, right? We make a tough choice that we know will help repair something. And we know, while we do it, something's going to get hurt along the way. We make a choice. Sometimes we make mistakes and we want to cover those up. And so we grab something and we do that. As I make these choices and I think of all these things that I'm going to do, they're visible to people. Oftentimes the choices that we make can be seen. People can see what we do and it helps form their opinion of us as well. And oftentimes it's these big ones that matter. And every once in a while, we get the heavy one, the big one, the irregularly shaped one that definitely doesn't fit the shape of who I am. But it's a choice I have to make nonetheless. And so I somehow, some way make that choice, fit this in, and watch it weigh down everything in between. Big choices are a part of what we do. Every once in a while, we think about those choices through the frame of how we cut something out. No matter what we do, it fills our space. But if we pause for a moment just right now and look at this, look at me, I'm not full here. I can see through this. I can look through this and see you behind. There is space that remains. That space is filled by the little things. And sometimes those little things form a lot. Did I floss my teeth that morning? Did I get a breakfast before I ran out the door? Don't always make that choice. Did I hold the door for somebody as they were running, holding a bunch of things? Did I inconvenience myself just a little bit in that moment? All these little things that take seconds upon seconds. All these little choices that we make day upon day and hour upon hour and second upon second. That in and of themselves don't particularly matter, but when I take them in a larger scale, somehow perfectly fits the shape of who I am. The big decisions, when we step away, don't even quite seem as visible. I see all these little things that I decided to do that for me in the moment felt like nothing. But when I take them as a whole, there's nothing better that perfectly fits the shape of who I am than those little choices that I make every day. Oftentimes those choices exist down in this space that I can't see at all, those things we do anyway. You see, friends, we have the opportunity to make these choices. And as we do it intentionally and with energy and with compassion and love, we start to see what we can be. Now, every time I think about this moment, I start to feel overwhelmed. Because suddenly you're telling me, or I'm telling you, that all of these little tiny choices fill the shape of who I am in a way that I should probably be giving them more attention. I should probably be thinking more about those little things. And of course, we can't control everything in every moment in the way that we would like. And to try to change every single little choice would be truly overwhelming. So here's my suggestion instead. Start with something small, a small list. I have in my wallet right now a list of 3 things that I've worked on over the course of this year, tiny little things to try and make myself just a little bit more present for others. Number 1 on that list is hold the door open for others. And I've got this thought in my mind. Everybody has this imaginary distance that you will be willing to hold the door open for somebody. If they're past that line, nope, I'm letting it shut. They've got it. And if they're past or close to me on that line, I'll hold it for you. So I've got that too. And what I did this year is I said, I'm going to extend 10 feet onto that line. And I'm going to stand there a little bit longer. And inevitably what happens is we make eye contact, that person sees I'm holding this door, and they start doing this, right? They do that kind of mock run thing, and all I say in that moment is, nah, you're good. I can sit here and stand and wait. It's not a big deal. It's 10 extra seconds, but it's a recognition of that person that I'm willing to make that move. Number 2 on that list is pick up a piece of trash when I see it. I'm not perfect at this, but working in a school, I oftentimes think about the fact that if everybody on that campus picked up one piece of trash on any given day, we wouldn't have to do very much more of it. And so I try to pick up pieces of litter as I see them on the outside walk, in the halls, wherever I am, and toss them into the recycling or the trash. Simple little thing. It actually doesn't cost any more time because I'm usually moving in the same direction while I do it. Number 3 is the toughest one for me. Number 3 is this. Other married folk might be able to wrap their head around this. My wife comes home and oftentimes chastises me because as she peruses the house, she sees strewn throughout random socks. Socks that I have, for some reason, taken off in that space in that moment and decided fit really well into the nook of that couch cushion, right? Or that fit really well as I'm putting my kids to bed way at the bottom of their sheets that we get to find later as a little surprise. And so I have tried my best to make sure that number 3 is, why don't you just put those socks in the hamper, my friend? I'm getting there. I'm not perfect, my wife would tell you. All of these things make this manageable, from overwhelming of so many choices to 3 that I think about. Now I'm nearing my landing point for this sharing, but I'm going to tell you one little secret that I don't always share. I've given a talk very much like this before. It was that same year, my senior year. As I was getting closer to graduation, I somehow finished up my high school career as a valedictorian at my high school. There were 19 of us that year. And so there was a voting process to decide who was going to give the graduation address. And by some miracle, I was selected. And I had plenty of lead time, about 6 weeks, for my principal to put something together. And so instead of doing that, I didn't. And the week prior, I said, I should probably do this. And of course, that was the week where we weren't in classes. And so instead of doing that, I went to work, I hung out, and suddenly I found myself on the day of graduation not having a speech written, but having an idea. And the title of that speech was Floss Your Teeth. And I referenced the situation that I started this with. The only difference being, my speech that day was written on a napkin as I was processing in for my high school graduation. And so the words that I shared, the ideas that were in my mind that made a lot of sense, came out and just spread throughout the room without really any direction. I sat down after I gave that talk, and I felt a little embarrassed, a little disappointed, because I really wanted to impact somebody with those words. And as I've reflected, I realized I did. It just wasn't the people I thought I was going to impact. I impacted myself. And I decided from that point forward, when I get a responsibility and honor of that nature, I'm going to take it just a little bit more seriously. And so I value and appreciate this opportunity for just a slight bit of redemption to share that story in a way that I feel makes just a little bit more sense. In this life, it's those little moments that really count. I thank you for your time.